Hi, this is Adrian, and welcome to the new episode of DoYouMQ. DoYouMQ is a podcast where we discuss enterprise messaging and interview IBM MQ experts to share their insights and knowledge on the vital role of message queuing in today's world. Today, my guest is Martin Evans, IBM MQ Technical Product Manager. Hello, Martin.
Hi, Adrian.
Right, so today we'll be talking a bit about MQ on AWS, more or less the updates, what's new on it. So, first thing that I would like you to tell us is what's your role with AWS and what work have you done so far and what you are working on?
Sure. So my role is to work with AWS and our partners and our development teams to make sure that we can run MQ on the AWS platform and work with the development teams and the AWS teams that provide things like quick starts, partner solutions, and bring that all together. So I kind of bring the two together and come up with ideas and ways we can deploy MQ onto AWS that meet our customers' requirements.
Yeah, so basically you connect the IBM MQ technical team that develops this and AWS team that makes sure that it runs properly there on the cloud.
Yeah, exactly. And also think about, what our customers' needs are for AWS as well, and developers as well, how to get them started. I think it's a good platform for developers to have a play with MQ and, just spin stuff up on the free tiers and things like that, to just kind of experience MQ and just get those like initial little projects or just, experimenting with MQ off the ground.
It certainly is a nice focus to enable our people that already work with AWS to use MQ, prepare them resources and enable them to use MQ, because MQ is really high tier product, and if it's only available on certain platforms, it really cuts off the market.
Right, yeah, and a lot of our customers are moving to AWS, or certainly looking to move to AWS, and I think there's a big developer community that also use AWS just to sort of try things out as well. It's a good platform for that.
Right. My second question is, what are the current projects on AWS?
Great question. So quite a bit. So we've already done some work on AWS in the past. We've had a quick start out there for quite a few years now, which is actually a little bit out of date, admittedly. So we are working on a new quick start. That's being worked on as we speak. So we're working with AWS to deliver that. That would showcase our latest native HA technology running on
greatest.
Yeah, on EKS. So we're hoping to get a quick start out, or as they're now called, partner solutions, hopefully in March, and that would give you kind of like a one-click or like a form to fill out, almost one-click deploy MQ onto AWS EKS. So the AWS's Kubernetes offering with native HA. Not decided quite yet on what we'll do with the original quick start. We may update that, but we might also potentially replace it as well. So that's sort of to be determined, I suppose. So that's kind of what we've got today. I think we've got a few blogs and bits and pieces out there as well that just explain what you can do on AWS. That's what we got. But what we've got in process as well, and actually, no, let me take a step back. We've also recently released some stuff under the sort of what I call developer experience, so IBM MQ developer. So we have like I suppose you could have almost like two tracks as well to this. There's like the more sort of just get started with MQ, kind of, just start a queue manager, whether you're an administrator or a developer, anybody can just spin it up kind of thing. There's that sort of approach, if you like. But there's also more of what I'd call the developer experience and, something that's more focused towards developers. So our developer experience team have been working on solutions for AWS as well. So they already have today, they've got a guide on how to get MQ on AWS, which uses ECS, the Elastic Container Service. Hopefully I got that right. And MQ, and they have produced a great guide that basically takes you from from start to finish to get an MQ up and running and what have you. So that's out there today. So we've kind of got this like developer focus and what I'd call perhaps a more generic focus as well. So if I talk about perhaps what the developers have done as well to date, and then I'll come back to some of the futures in perhaps what you could call both of those streams, if you like. Ultimately, it will come together, and part of my job, I suppose, is to bring that all together and have a really coherent, sort of story on MQ on AWS. But I think it's still fair to say, there will be different personalities, and we may need to do things differently. Yeah, so like a developer is perhaps going to want to just spin up. They don't care about the architecture. They're just going to want to spin something up so they can, connect an application to a queue and stuff like that. Whereas, an administrator might be a bit more interested in the architectural side of it and what options are there from an architectural. But what I would like to do is just bring that all together, so at least, it's all coherent and everyone can see, what the options are and they can choose what's right for them. So if we talk about what I call the developer experience has been doing. So we've got this guide out there which will get a developer up and running with an ECS container, Docker Compose, great stuff there. That's done. That's out there. The code is out there, and I think we're just about to announce and put a guide out there for what we call a showcase application, which is based on React and Node.js. So that's going to give you a really nice application that you can deploy and connect to a queue manager. A really good sample of building an application using that technology, and then using that ECS deployment or another deployment, hooking it up to something else. So that's on the developer experience. What I call the developer experience, if you like. They are also working on a cheat sheet which will go with that ECS deployment. So taking it a bit further, how to look at the logs and stuff like that, how to set up TLS and basically run with that deployment. And the futures for that, what I'd call the developer experience, are a coding challenge, which hopefully, and this may be a way off yet, but there'll be a coding challenge and hopefully a badge and a quiz to go along with that. So quick summary, I can deploy a queue on AWS using ECS with Docker and Compose, and then you've got the Showcase app, which is a great app. The React interface is really nice. You can just drag and drop publishers and subscribers and producers topics and consumers. It's really nice. I recommend you go and have a look at that.
Yeah, we'll do certainly.
A cheat sheet and then the futures, which will be the badge or the coding challenge, badge and quiz to go with all of that. So that's more down the developer track.
Yeah, so it seems that developers already have a lot of toys to play with on AWS, and there is more to come for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I say, my plan is to get a nice coherent view of everything that's out there, perhaps with those themes, more of the developer personality or persona and the administrator. So on what I would perhaps call more of the administration sort of track or architectural track, perhaps, we've got the existing Quick Start, new Quick Start we're working on, and I've also been recently testing out our Ansible module. So we recently released as open source an Ansible module for MQ, and I've been using that to connect to an AWS EC2 Ubuntu micro server, which is in the free tier, and deploying the developer edition of MQ to that, and it's absolutely great. That's really quick, so I'll probably write a blog on that. But again, I want to bring all this together, so you can find all this information in one place, if you like. We are also talking to NetApp actually about storage. We've got some customers that want to use FSXN, have I got that right? Yeah, FXXN, which is a storage offering from Amazon. And one of the underlying storage technologies is NetApp storage. So we're working with NetApp, or we're going to be working with them, so they can run some tests against their storage using MQ, and hopefully we'll get that on the sort of vendor tested list on our support pages of storage. So that's, again, going back to my role, that's kind of, part of my role is working with partners and vendors to kind of bring all this stuff together. And I mentioned the Ansible. So in quick summary then, on the sort of what I'd call the more architectural administration track, we've got an older quick start out there, which we're not sure quite what to do with that at the moment. May replace that, may update it, may replace it. Thinking possibly even replace it with the, a guide on how to use Ansible with a micro, which I think might be easier. But again, that's still to be decided. The new quick start, which is going to leverage the EKS and our native HA solution, and storage options, and and obviously the Ansible piece that I mentioned.
Right, so there's plenty of going on, plenty that's already done.
Yeah, and that's obviously, we've talked about a lot of things, and it might feel like those are a little bit disjointed, but part of the...
They will join in eventually.
Yeah, they will eventually, yeah. We'll have a nice, clear and clean story on, what's available and which options might suit you.
You mentioned a lot of projects and what's going on, but what are the overall future plans regarding MQ on AWS?
I think one of the things that we've always had in MQ is that we'll run anywhere. Back in the day, there was lots of different platforms that we'd support. And it was obviously a great tool for joining those systems together. And whilst the underlying technologies in AWS might still be Linux or OpenShift, it's obviously running on different platforms. So I think what we need to do is just make sure that whatever we do will support running on those different platforms, as in the cloud platforms or cloud providers, rather than just the underlying technology. So
make sure MQ is adapted to run on AWS as possible.
We're doing some work with tokens, so things like that. So making sure that we can plug into the latest security technologies and things like that, which those cloud platforms may require, things like that. So it's not just AWS; it's any cloud platform really. Basically, just making sure MQ is up to date and able to run on those cloud providers or platforms.
Yeah. And in your opinion, what is the most important project on AWS right now? Or perhaps your favorite one?
I don't know really. I think the work that the developer experience team are doing is fantastic. They're doing some really good stuff. Whether it's the most important or not, I'm not sure. I think the architectural stuff is equally important. We need to showcase and show that MQ can be deployed in a production ready, enterprise ready environment. So I think I'm going to perhaps be on the fence a little bit there and say that both of those are equally important, that developer experience and the more sort of administration architectural side of things as well.
Yeah. Actually, I was able to take a look at the developer experience resources on deploying, and I was amazed how we can deploy the MQ in a matter of a few seconds on AWS with the resources they are providing. And something that before we would have to SSH into virtual machine, play with it, deploy just a few commands, and you are done. Yeah,
and I think that's a theme, that we're pursuing, automation, just making it easier. The Ansible module really is quite straightforward. You kind of set up your SSH and go. Download or clone the repo, change a couple little things, and off it goes, and you're up and running with MQ in no time at all. Same with the developer experience. The ECS, it's great. Yeah, as you say, you can just get up and running in no time at all, and that's the intention.
Right, there is one more topic, Martin, that I want to talk about. It's not related to AWS, but basically we are planning to start a new series on the podcast, MQ101. Could you tell us more about what is planned for this series?
Yeah, sure. So this was an idea that Adrian and I came up with. I think it's fair to say. We started thinking about, what could we do next in the podcasts, and I think one of the things for me is that having worked with MQ for a long time, you sometimes forget about some of the basics. It's kind of like you just assume so much, or you assume people have know things about MQ and what it's there for. And I thought it'd be quite good to take a step back and take it from the beginning. Why do you need MQ, and then build on that. So I think you could also call it MQ Basics or Back to Basics. So quite often we'll have like that discussion we've had earlier about AWS. We've talked about a lot of things. We talked about native HA, and we talked about Ansible and all these things, EKS and
yeah, but we assume people
exactly
even know what messaging is and how it works.
Exactly. So some of our audience will just follow along with that just fine and know what we're talking about. But I think to a lot of people, they may be just starting out in the messaging. Or want to start. And I think it would be nice to just take a step right back to basics and talk about, well, why do you need a queue in the first place? What is store and forward? Let's talk about the application interaction and the business use case, if you like, or let's go back to basics and then build on that. And I think what I would like to do is perhaps start with that question, well, why do I need MQ, or what's the point of it?
And then explain the point of messaging and why we are not talking about WhatsApp.
Then build on that with messaging patterns, get into a bit more detail about those patterns, and then perhaps talk a little bit about the or dive a bit deeper into the installation, the different platform options. I mean, we've talked about a multitude of platforms, cloud providers,
type of
platforms, deployments, containers, VMs. We've talked about all those things, but where do you start with those things? Perhaps we go back to basics.
The series will provide a foundational basis to, later on learn and develop further. So,
Yeah, and I think we can take it as far as we like. We could start out with those basics, but we could even start diving into some of the things that are quite technical about MQ. Like, for example, code pages, right? How many people that have perhaps been using MQ even for several years really understand what the code pages are all about and the conversion options and things like that? Because quite often you don't even.
First time I'm hearing about them.
Right, so you don't even potentially touch those things, right? Because you never did need it, because it's just something you never had to do. But there's so many things in MQ that you perhaps might not know about, and I think we can cover a lot of those things. Another good example is the channels. You've got quite a lot of different channel definition. I mean, what is a channel, right? What's a channel? Let's start with that. But then, quite often you'll find that somebody that's been using MQ for years might have only used two types of channel, right?
Yeah.
They may not even know about all the other ones. So let's talk about those. What are those channels? Why might you use them? So that's the plan for it. And hopefully our listeners will think that's a good idea as well.
Well, certainly there's a lot of material that we can tap into it. Anyways, Martin, that was really fun having you on the podcast once more, and hopefully we'll see each other again. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.